AI is not primarily testing your software stack or even your productivity, it's testing your leadership model. I'm old enough to know that for decades, accounting firms have deliberately not designed their leadership pipelines. They've inherited them. The disappearance of that rite of passage. They earned their badges. They went through it. That was old school. They experienced the grind. They endured it, and that legitimized leadership. It hardened people for leadership. If that was you, you survived it. You earned credibility, you put in the hours, you earned the equity, but now we automate that grind. And as much as something's been gained, something's been lost. The firms that navigate AI well, and some of them are doing it well, some of them are not doing it well. If you listen closely to the AI conversation inside accounting right now, it sounds like a productivity story, a productivity success story, faster compliance work, smarter audit sampling, cleaner drafts, lower costs, less personnel. This is the first in a 5-part leadership series I'm doing, looking at the leadership stress test. I'm Rob Brown. This is the Accounting Voices podcast coming out to you every week, giving you insights for leadership in accounting so you can run better firms and equip yourself with the brand and the commercial acumen and the knowledge, the insights you need to stay relevant and competitive in today's crazy world. So what I'm doing here is mirroring a little bit of what Chelsea Summers and I have done. I co-host the Inside Public Accounting podcast with Chelsea Summers. She's the executive director there. They do the IPA Top 500 in the UK and the Rosenberg survey, another fantastic research on the accounting profession, where it's going and the stories behind the numbers. And I'm picking up on a couple of things that Chelsea and I have discussed. And AI, we can't escape it these days. So I'm not doing a tech series here. I'm doing a leadership series here. 5 episodes coming at you over the next few weeks, looking at leadership under pressure in uncertain times. And I'm focusing on AI for this particular episode because AI is not primarily testing your software stack or even your productivity. It's testing your leadership model. And on the show with Chelsea, we recently unpacked the economic mechanics behind firm structure. We looked at production capacity, pricing discipline, the architecture that's quietly driven partner income for decades, the leverage, the income per full-time employees. And that conversation matters. It's important. And Chelsea shares some great statistics behind those. So check out the Inside Public Accounting podcast. But there's a deeper question that I want to confront here, because I'm old enough to know that for decades, accounting firms have deliberately not designed their leadership pipelines. They've inherited them. They've happened by accident. People have come in and served and gravitated into leadership roles. But these days, the game has changed. Back then, repetition created competence. Back when I was a math teacher, how did we learn our times tables? By repetition, by rote, doing them over and over again. That competence, it created confidence, and the confidence created partners. So think about that sequence again. Repetition created competence, competence created confidence, and the confidence created partners. You grew into that role. That traditional pyramid was not only economic architecture, that was the apprenticeship architecture. That was the rite of passage. That was what you had to go through to get to the top. And the junior staff did the grind. The managers reviewed and corrected that grind, and the partners absorbed the risk and managed the key relationships and built the networks. And it was an informal leadership factory. That was the way it went. The problem is that AI is removing large portions of that grind, that journey. And that creates let's call it the apprenticeship gap. There could be other names, but let's call it that, the entry-level gap. There are 3 structural principles that are being stress tested inside accounting firms right now. And number 1 is the collapse of slow learning. Because historically, judgment, commercial acumen, wisdom was learned through volume and repetition. You came in, you were chained to a desk for 5-10 years, and you learned stuff. You saw the same issues multiple times. You made mistakes, you were corrected, you were slowly exposed to clients and brought into important meetings. Those patterns became instinct. These days, AI compresses all of that exposure. So work that once required years of repetition, going through spreadsheets, check-in, recheck-in, somebody standing over your shoulder, that can be drafted in minutes. And it sounds like progress. And for many of you, it is. But if you compress that repetition without redesigning leadership development, people development, skills development for people, you dilute the judgment, you dilute that commercial nous, that acumen that once used to come with the grind. And if machines are handling first drafts Who's designing that second layer of learning? If the juniors are no longer immersed in the mechanical work, the grunt work, the checking, where do they absorb the context? Where do they get the nuance, the commercial instinct, the ability to develop a questioning critical mindset? If you remove that repetition, you've got to replace it with something else. Intentional exposure in your firm for your people, the tasks they need to be doing, not turning them into AI agents. Yes, you've got to develop them with the skills of AI. I get that. But that intentional exposure to problems and emotional clients and all of those difficulties, we're taking all of that away. And if you remove that repetition that traditionally they'd built their career on, and you don't replace it with anything, you're not modernizing your firm. You're hollowing out your future leadership bench. So that's the first problem here, is this collapse of the slow learning and the traditional entry-level workplace model. Let's look at the second thing now, the thinning of the middle. And I've talked about this on previous shows, how AI is changing the game. Let me give you two scenarios. Let's take a $40 million regional accounting firm. They have a poor employer brand. They're struggling perhaps to hire entry-level staff, and the talent pipeline they know is drying up. So they introduce AI tools to ease the pressure, and the tech vendors are helping them, and it works. And they're able to slow or even stop junior hiring for a couple of cycles, and the margin holds. You've probably done it. And on paper, this looks disciplined. It looks like it works. But let's track to 5 years from now. The leadership bench is thin. Who's on the manager bench coming in to pick up the slack as the workforce is getting older and older and people are retiring and moving on? It's thin. The equity candidates that you have got in place, they probably lack the depth of client exposure. They lack that depth of experience, because all they've been doing is training the AI to do their job. They've not been doing the job themselves. And I'm not saying that's the answer, do the job themselves, but the commercial confidence they've got is unstable. It's on shaky ground. It's built on AI. It's not built on years of experience and mistakes and exposure to clients and problems. So nothing collapsed, but the experiential learning, someone looking over your shoulder, the mentoring, the coaching, the conversations in the corridor, the client meetings, all of that commercial confidence is undermined. It's uneven, and the density of that experience declined. It became thin on the ground. Here's another scenario. A private equity-backed firm, they have a huge injection of capital. They accelerate offshore production. They go outsourcing. Makes sense. So they layer the AI across all the compliance workflows, across all of that entry-level work. They flatten the domestic structures. That improves partner economics, and the enterprise value of the firm improves. Great. But what's really happening? The domestic managers, they're mentoring fewer juniors because there are fewer juniors, and the offshore is handling the volume and the grunt work, and the AI is handling the drafts and the entry-level work. Where is the ownership thinking being formed? Where is the equity partner mindset being developed? How are you honing these leaders of the future? If you redesign production capacity without redesigning development capacity, you're going to create a leadership vacuum. And firms are seeing this right now. And that's the second problem. It's the thinning out of the middle. So on the pyramid, you're thinning out the lower end and you're thinning out the middle. So guess what happens at the top? So let's go to the third problem now, the disappearance of that rite of passage. The older partners, they had the stripes, didn't they? They earned their badges. They went through it. That was old school. They experienced the grind. They endured it. And that legitimized leadership. It hardened people for leadership. That was you. You survived it. You earned credibility. You put in the hours. You earned the equity. But now we automate that grind. And as much as something's been gained, something's been lost. I mean, fine, I get it. It's the economics of running a professional service firm. But what earns you the right to lead now? We need commercial judgment. We need client trust. We need strategic impact. We need critical thinking. Yes, we need technology skills. We need communication skills to interpret the narrative behind the numbers. All of these require deliberate experience, deliberate practice, deliberate exposure. And if you don't redefine the pathway to ownership and equity and partnership and promotion in your firm, you risk two outcomes in my book. The first is the technically capable professionals, those really good technicians. They've got shallow commercial instinct. They're not necessarily good with people, but they'll get promoted. And the senior partners, this is the second outcome, the senior partners are now doubting the qualities of the next generation, whether it's earned the equity that's been provided for them. And this tension corrodes culture. You've got tension from the bottom and a scarcity at the bottom, tension from the top. What really makes an equity partner these days, or even a salaried partner, produces leadership under pressure and a stress test. Here's the stress test in my mind. If AI removes 30% of your entry-level compliance work over the next 3 years, what replaces it as your apprentice engine? What replaces the bottom of the pyramid for you? If you can't answer that clearly, you don't have an AI strategy. You have a cost crisis. It's a cost plan, if you like. It's an economic plan. But if you want to go further than that and think about leadership development, people development, talent development, nurturing of future leaders, exposure to AI and even outsourcing is not the answer. It might provide you with short-term lift, but there's a lot more to it. And that's what I want you to see with this series that we're doing. And if you want some data behind these numbers, check out the Inside Public Accounting podcast. Chelsea and I recorded an episode recently on leverage and operating structure, and we talked about evolving firm models and staff architecture and economic design. But here on Accounting Voices, I have a slightly different take, and I'm asking a slightly different question. I'm not asking you how your margin holds, because I know it'll hold. I'm asking how your leadership holds. The firms that navigate AI well, and some of them are doing it well, some of them are not doing it well, but they're not going to be the firms that brought the most tools. They're going to be the ones that have, yes, integrated AI, but they've also redesigned how people are developed, how judgment is formed, how exposure is structured to the work that's been done, and how ownership is earned. This is that apprenticeship gap. It's that entry model gap. So that's the first episode. In the next one, I want to examine what leadership capability must look like when technical mastery is no longer the primary differentiator. We promote great technical people, don't we? But they're not necessarily the best people for leadership. They're brilliant at what they do, but it's not a differentiator in the talent market. There are millions of brilliant, technically competent accounting people out there. It doesn't make them great leaders. Some of them don't want to be leaders. Some of them don't deserve to be leaders, but technically they are superb, but it's not the differentiator. So just to wrap up this episode, AI is not eliminating jobs. It's eliminating entry-level apprenticeship type roles. And if we compress this repetition and put it into short learning cycles where they are, without redesigning our people development, we're diluting judgment, we're diluting exposure to valuable experience. Your production capacity can evolve. It may get a lot better, but development capacity must be designed at the same time, because if machines are drafting the work, who's doing the learning? You're teaching the machines. Margin compression, yes, we get that. But judgment compression, that's something different. So you remove grind, you remove that rite of passage, you remove that traditional way of doing things. And I'm not saying let's all go back to the way it was. No, I'm not. But you can't have the AI strategy without the leadership strategy. The pyramid, that was the informal leadership factory. It's been eroded. We're looking at different models of firms now. So go away, have a think about your position in the firm. If you're in a leadership role, how are you bringing your people through? How easy are you making it for them to do the tasks, but without them having to acquire the skills and the commercial acumen and the critical thinking to nail those tasks? This is the Accounting Voices podcast. I'm Rob Brown. You can see us on YouTube and on all of the podcast apps. We've got some exciting things coming up on the show. It's been great having you along for the episode. Please share it with your friends, tune in, and we'll see you on the next episode when we'll talk a little bit more about this technical competence and whether it should be rewarded with leadership roles or there's a different way of doing it. Have a great day. And remember, if you think change is hard, try it, not changing.